All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Tui, and I am the Ed Tech and Adoption Specialist here at Ozobot. And I just wanted to welcome everyone to our webinar. We also have Heather Myers, who is our account executive here, co-hosting with us today. And we are so excited to share our agenda and our special guests that are here to teach us all about how to use Ozobots to teach math in the classroom. So I'm going to jump right into the agenda because our two guests have such great content to share that I want to give them as much time as possible to share. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly go through a giveaway sign up. Then I will introduce our first educator, Nicky Jones. We'll have her walk through her content creation and what her lessons look like in implementation. Then it'll be Lisa Richardson's turn, and she'll do the same thing. She'll talk about how she creates her content and how she teaches it in her classroom. Then we'll have time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up for either Lisa or Nicky, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom to type that in, and we'll ask those questions at the end of the webinar. After Q&A, we will have our giveaway time where we will give away 3 educator entry kits, and we'll announce those 3 winners. So to sign up for the giveaway, you're going to go to ozo.bot/giveaway. You're going to type in your name and your email address, and this is just so we can follow up with you if you're the winner to get your information so that we can send you that educator entry kit. We are going to ask that only one person has per entry. So if you do decide to enter multiple times, then you'll be immediately disqualified. And the winner must be present for the duration of the webinar, and also the winner will be announced at the end of the webinar. So we will give till about 4:16. So we'll give everyone about 15 minutes to sign up for the giveaway. That's 4:16 Pacific Coast time and 7:16 if you're on the East Coast. So go ahead and get to that website. Again, it's ozo.bot/giveaway to sign up. And we'll go ahead and jump right in. I'd like to introduce Nicky Jones, who's a 3rd grade teacher at Chris Young Elementary. She has made such amazing math content with her Ozobots, and I'm just going to hand it over to her. But before I do want to highlight that her lessons are in our lesson library. So any of these lessons that she talks about, if you're interested in teaching them with your students or just looking at them, or if they inspire any ideas for you, you can go to ozo.bot/Nikki, and that's Nikki with a capital N. It is case sensitive, and it'll pull up her lessons in our lesson library so that you can browse all of hers in one place. So I will hand it over to Nikki, and she can go ahead and take over. Nikki, would you like to share your screen so that you can click through?
Yes, ma'am.
I will stop the share and hand it over to you.
Okay, let me go ahead and get my screen shared. Here we go. And present. Okay, thank you, Melissa and Heather, for having me tonight. I'm so excited to be here and to share with everyone. So like Melissa said, I am Nicky Jones. I'm a boy mom to 2 very wild little boys. I invested in some headphones because they're upstairs in the bath right now. So I teach at Chris Young Elementary. I'm a 3rd grade teacher. And before this, I was actually an instructional technology coach, which is kind of where my technology passion comes in. And I'm at a STEAM-focused school. So they are really passionate about helping educators get STEAM into the classroom. Like Melissa said, here are a couple of my lessons. The first one is a multiplication maze, and I'm actually going to go over a little bit more later on when we talk about using basic facts, but this one is really awesome to just get started with the Ozobot. It was one of the first lessons that I did. The second one is a subtraction fractions and then comparing. So we're going to get into those a little bit more, and you're going to be able to see videos of those in action. So to get started with Ozobot, I'll be honest with you, when I first started, I had no idea what an Ozobot was. And my coworker, Christine, she said, I'm so excited. I've taught with these before in 2nd, and I want to do this probability lesson. And I was like, I don't know. Like, don't even know how to turn it on. So fast forward, I turned the Ozobot on, I let my kids go with it, and just seeing their engagement was absolutely amazing. They were really picking up this concept of probability that can be kind of abstract for 8-year-olds, and they were so engaged. They were helping each other, they were helping me. I had no idea. So this was back in probably September. I became obsessed. Our STEAM coach has 18 of them in the lab, and she was like, "You can check them out, Nikki. It's fine." So I started checking them out, and then I actually started a donors choose. So I did 2, and then I got 2 more and 2 more, and that's when Melissa and Heather started reaching out about becoming part of the Ozobot team. And I've submitted those lessons and being a certified educator. So the day we were released from school, I actually got my certified educator kit, which was 12 brand new bots and the really cool charging pad. So if you're inspired at all tonight, I would highly encourage you to go the route of becoming a certified educator. So that's kind of how I got started. Some of my lesson inspiration is actually by looking at just what other educators are doing. The Ozobot library has tons of lessons already created, but one of the things that I find is that I like to tweak it to what my class needs and the standards that I'm teaching here in Virginia. So I get a lot of ideas from the Ozobot library, but also just Twitter and Pinterest and teacher paid teachers. I'm going to share with you a little bit more, but a lot of what I do is stuff that I would have just been doing in the classroom anyways, but I found a way to incorporate the Ozobot with it. So some of the math focused lessons that I have done are probability, which is that first lesson that I talked to you about, and it's in the bottom right hand corner. It's an easy lesson. It was basically all of my template created lessons that have a maze with them. I create them through PowerPoint or just through Microsoft Word using the drawing tool. I just make it, I don't know the exact point font, but I just make it the right size for the Ozobot to travel and create it through there. A lot of the stuff that the kids create, they just do with the line coding. So these are just a couple of lessons that I've highlighted from my classroom. The time that I started getting most of the Ozobots is when we were teaching fractions and then going into our area and perimeter with measurement and geometry. So you'll see a lot more lessons pop up from those. So the one in the top, so this little guy is actually the one with basic facts, and we were doing multiplication and division. So that's one of the first lessons that I submitted. It's just a basic maze that could easily be adapted to any fact: addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, or to actually have all of them incorporated. The other ones, I know, just thinking about different grade levels, many grade levels in Virginia teach measurement. So this one was actually teaching measurement to the half inch, so it can easily be adapted to a younger grade or an older grade. Over here we have calculating area and perimeter, and they actually had to create their own polygons and then measure the length of each side and then calculate the perimeter. So I'm going to show you a couple of the lessons actually in action, because I just think it's a little bit easier to see them, how it's actually being used with the Ozobot. So I'm actually going to flip over here to Twitter. And this is the first one. This is with fractions, and it's actually subtraction with like denominators. Let's see, let's blow this guy up.
All right, what do you have here? 10 tenths, and you're going to roll them down with your Ozobot. Okay, go. Oh, okay, what did you knock down? Okay, so what is your equation going to be? What's your subtraction? Equals 3 tenths. Good job. That's what you have left over. 3 tenths. Good work, buddy. All right, what do you have here?
Okay, so sometimes I think that it's just easier to see it in action. That was one really simple lesson. And kind of as I mentioned before, it was one of it was a lesson that I was getting ready to put into place that I've done for several years. I usually just do it with toilet paper rolls and a soccer ball that I have in my classroom. But as I was getting the things prepared, I was like, why can't I do this with the Ozobot? So I'll talk a little bit more about how I adapted that lesson, but I'm going to show you two others that were really great. This one was comparing fractions using a double fraction bar. And this one actually had a lot of coding involved in it because they had, so the first one, I'm sorry, the first one they were using the iPad and the Evo app to drive the Ozobot. So it was just connected through Bluetooth and they were driving to knock the tens rods down. This one, they did simple line coding. So to begin with, each kid got two fractions and they had to compare them. So that's one of our skills, and we work with number lines and different models. So we have them create this double bar. And then there are two fractions. They had to code the Ozobot to actually travel the length of the fractions. And then they were comparing, seeing which one was greater. So let's go ahead. There's not a lot of talking in this one until the end, so you're not losing audio.
So what did you find out? So the 2/4 is good girl.
Oh, so that one, I just love her reaction when she had been working on the code for this for quite some time, because here the Ozobot was he was turning. So she had to add the go straight code, and then here the turn right and turn right again. So it was just really powerful to see. And one of the things that I feel like is really good teaching with the Ozobots is that grit and perseverance. And she had been working so hard for so long, not so long, but for a while, to get her codes just right. And it's just awesome to see them light up when they, figure something out. Okay, I have one more that I want to show. This one is working with fractions on a number line. In Virginia, fractions are huge in third grade. They come heavily on our SOL, and we really try to practice them as many ways as we can. So I took full advantage of the Ozobot. And this one we were working with fraction equivalencies. And you're going to hear this little girl refer to the Ozobot's name. So see if you can catch the name for this little Ozobot.
Equivalent fraction to 2/4. A place where the Ozobot goes exactly the same amount. So what's an equivalent fraction for 2/4? 4.
So that Ozobot's name is Brightness, and I will let you know that all of our Ozobots have names. Actually, not the new ones, but the originals all have names. So those are just a couple of lessons that I wanted to share with you. Seeing them actually in action, I think it just helps to kind of visualize what it would look like in the classroom.
Nikki, could I interrupt really quickly?
Yes, please.
Just because we did get a question from James in the audience, and I feel like it would be best to answer it now. And he's asking, how long do these lessons last? Are they one-day lessons? Are they multiple-day lessons? What does that look like in your class?
So some of them I'm actually doing as like a station. So they would have it as an option to do, and they would have the week to do it, especially when I only had the 6 Ozobots or the 2 Ozobots in my classroom. It was an option for them to do. And then they had multiple days to complete it. Some of the lessons, so going back to like this one, for example, we did this, the whole class was working on creating. So this one we were doing identifying shapes through 12 sides, and everybody got their piece of paper and everybody made their maze. So it kind of just depends on what your goal is, I guess, with the lesson. I've used them with small group and with whole group. I hope that answers. And if not, James, please feel free to ask a follow-up question, or I know my Twitter handle is on here. I'm happy to speak with anyone following this if you have additional questions.
And we'll
And what
post your Twitter handles again at the end of the session as well, so everyone can see them one more time.
perfect.
To reach out. Yeah, thanks, Nikki.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so we're on this one, I think. So one of the things that I really like about the Ozobots is the ability to differentiate, and they're all still working with the Ozobot, but it might look different what they're actually being asked to do. So this can be in my classroom, but it also can go across multiple grade levels. So for this particular lesson, the bowling, I feel like everybody has 10 rods or something that you can use as bowling pins in your classroom. And most grade levels are going to teach something that could go with this. So for a lower level, it might just be identifying and doing a basic 2 plus 8, sorry, here we go. 2 plus 8 equals 10 if they're knocking it down. It might not have anything to do with fractions, but it could just be basic identification. In my class, I have some friends, I have a very wide population of students with lots of different needs, English language learners, students with special needs. And some of them, it was just a basic bowling and they identified that 3/10 of the fractions fell over or 7/10 of the fractions fell over. We moved on as we kind of progressed through our unit and we did adding fractions, subtracting fractions, and then kind of as an extension, we did improper fractions and mixed numbers. So this is at the time when I only had 4 Ozobots. So the 4 friends working together at this station actually had to add their 4 numbers that they knocked over. So 4/10 plus 7/10 plus 6/10 plus 3/10 and come up with the mixed number and the improper fraction. So there are lots of ways to differentiate even with just this very simple bowling task. So I think that's really powerful with the Ozobots. Okay, so I was also asked about what were some of my challenges becoming a coding educator or just getting familiar with the Ozobots. And I think the very first one is I just couldn't wrap my brain around what I was going to do with this robot or how I was going to get it into my content. Because as a 3rd grade classroom teacher in Virginia, we have 2 SOLs, standardized tests at the end of the year, and we have this huge curriculum to cover, and you know, as an educator, there's just not a lot of time. So I couldn't at the beginning figure out how I was going to teach coding with the Ozobot and still do like how to find the time. So I would say that once I dove in and Christine shared that first lesson with me and I saw that I could teach coding alongside of math or coding alongside of the other content areas, that made it much more manageable for me to kind of understand how it worked. Part of my advice to you is if you're new is not to be afraid to fail and to just jump in and see where it's going to fit into your curriculum and how to incorporate it and learn alongside the kids. So a lot of the lessons that I do, I don't have a lesson plan template for them because they kind of come up. I'm, gathering my things and I'm getting out all of the resources. I'm pulling up my files for my fractions unit or my geometry unit, or it might be the day that I'm getting ready to start new stations and I pull out my stuff and I'm just realizing that much of what I'm doing can be done with the Ozobot as well. So we were, one of the things before break, we did an exit ticket for all the different line segment, point, ray, angle. And I would have normally just had them do it on a Post-it note, and they would have happily done that, but they were so excited to draw it as a path for the Ozobot. So that's one of the other things that they're so motivating and engaging. And then on my very last slide before we hand it back to Melissa and then over to Lisa is that I have figured out ways to incorporate them across the content. So the first picture that you see is actually an ancient civilization museum. So in 3rd grade, we teach ancient civilizations of Greece, Rome, China, Egypt, and Mali. And we do an end of unit culminating project. And sometimes we did they would make an artifact box or they contributed to a a poster. So in this case, they actually had to make their own museum, and then we pulled in nonfiction text features. So they actually had to create an illustration and then add a caption to go with their photograph for the Ozobot to understand. And then the coding piece, this child actually added the pause code for the Ozobot to stop and admire each of their exhibits. The next one that you'll see is actually a food chain. So we pulled in science, and they showed the Ozobot, or the travel of energy, from one organism to the next, and they actually folded this up and around and made it into kind of a cycle, which was pretty cool. And then the last one you'll see is with geography and ancient civilizations. So this was the day before we left from the release, and we had, in Virginia, we do the continents and oceans, so they actually had to label the continents and oceans, and then I had a list of criteria that the Ozobot had to do. So he had to perform, he had to visit 3 continents, he had to stop at 4 geographic features, have 5 codes throughout, and then they actually recorded that on Seesaw. So I found lots of different ways to incorporate it into all the contents, not just math, but math is kind of my passion, and I feel like it's where the Ozobot just led me, and that's where we did most of our lessons this year have come from. So Melissa, I'll go ahead. I think I hit my 15-minute mark.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Nikki. Yes, there's some great questions coming through on the Q&A, and we're gonna definitely follow up with those at the end of the webinar.
Okay.
So keep those questions coming. There's some really great ones for Nikki, but I will actually go ahead and introduce Lisa, who is a high school teacher who also uses Ozobot to teach math, and we're just really excited to feature her, as well as she's come up with some awesome and really creative content, just like Nikki has as well. And you can find her Twitter handle here, which again we'll repost at the end of the webinar, so that you can get into contact with both Lisa and Nikki. And to find Lisa's lessons, if you go to ozo.bots/Lisa, and that's Lisa with an uppercase L, it'll take you to her list of lessons. And she has 6 currently in our lesson library. And of course, there's more from other educators in our lesson library as well. So I highly encourage everyone to check out both Lisa and Nikki's lessons to get some inspiration, or just to see what might work in their own classrooms. So I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Lisa. Welcome, Lisa. And I think you're on mute, so you might want to click the unmute button as well, so that we can hear you.
Okay, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, am I sharing the right screen? Because I have a split screen here. So, hi, nice for all of you to join. Nice group. So I have several lessons that are published, and I wanted to start out with, because I was reading the questions as we were going along, and I did want to answer a couple of them before we got started, like a kind of like a trial and error. What are the challenges we see? And one of them was, how much more time does it take to add in a quick coding part? Well, I teach high school, and sometimes coding is not quick. It's definitely something that you want to give time to, because you don't want to rush it. Even if they've already done Ozobot coding with colors, sometimes they forget it has to be the right size, it has to be the right thickness. And so you do have to go through those trial and error. It's really great troubleshooting and really great perseverance, as Nikki said, for the kids. And there's another one that said, is there a way to guarantee the thickness? And to me, it's just practice. I usually show them how to hold the markers correctly and remind them it has to be the same size as it is on the color coding sheets. I think having the color coding sheets in front of them and each kid having their own is really, really important. So I kind of wanted to start out with that. And then I'm going to go on to my lessons. And if you click on my links after you get the PowerPoint, they take you to all of my blog write-ups that gives you kind of some troubleshooting and some feedback on what these look like in class. So that, if you have any questions, they might actually be answered there. It might just give you some tips and tricks if you don't see them within the Ozobot lesson, but most of them are written into the lesson. So again, Ozobot and math, the way I found it is I went into a training just in a random meeting at a STEM conference, And I sat down and did this, and I'm like, order of operations, logic. Oh, I love this. And I immediately went back to my peer, and I was like, I want Ozobot to my classroom. And she's like, okay. And I ended up doing a donor's choose and got my first package. So if none of y'all have done a donor's choose, definitely go that route. They help you out. And you never know who's going to be willing to help you in your classroom. I use them probably about 4 definite times a year, and sometimes I might throw in activities other times. I actually have 2 major grades I do in high school with them. So I do actually use them more in the spring because that's when I got them. So that's when I started developing my lessons. But I do not use them every day because I do not want them to get bored. I want it to be an exciting thing and a fun thing to do, and something to motivate, which is kind of what I did when I start out with my classes. I like to kind of tell people what my classes are like because I have a lot of English language learners. I have a lot of special education, and about a third are the state standardized test retesters. So I have some definitely, I guess you would say, like, difficult learners and stuff, and they do well with it. It's definitely something that goes across, the language barrier as well. And I think that that's a great thing because when you get into color coding, and even when you do Ozoblocky, it's just basic. It's kind of like math. It's universal. The first activity I have here is the geometry task cards, and these can be used from middle school to high school. The vocabulary overrides. I make it more of an independent practice. I don't know how Nikki does it, but they just have to do a certain amount of cards within the class, and that's the only direction they get from me. It has a lot of vocabulary, which is actually in our state standards. The vocabulary is at a lower level, but it's critical. It's critical in geometry. They have to have the vocab. So as they go through them, and I have a little video here, they have to do all the challenges themselves, and this is the introduction to our geometry unit in high school. So I did have this one little video of my kids' successes. They love showing it. And these are the bits that y'all are seeing right here. My first set was Ozobot bits. I do still use them. I just got in the one of the things that the kids also have to think about with this, and where it gives a lot of really great thought process, is you don't want Ozobot to get stuck. So what do you need to do to get him to where he continues to move? It's a great intro for the kids, and it gets it out there. And I love it when my kids get out their phones and record it and share it, and they find it fun, and it's just unique. This is one of my major grades. This was developed around NASA. So any of you guys that teach space, you might be able to adapt this to the lower level for the sciences for space, but I did it with geometry. And they had to roll the dice, and they have 2 different dice, and they have to get 6 different elements. So what happens is one dice is all coding and one dice is all geometry. So they get an even amount of both concepts. So it's definitely individualized. Differentiation, generally when they're working in groups, they kind of work it out. You'd be surprised who might be the better coder or anything. And what I do like about this activity and the last one is that the only thing you need is your markers. I'm so sorry, somebody asked me. I teach in Texas, and so that's one of the things, is that you can just have markers and you can go. So if your technology's down that day, your internet's down that day, all you need is 4 markers and a piece of paper, and you can have a major grade. And there is a lot of troubleshooting, like kids not writing them right, kids not color coding correctly. So before you do a project like this and the next one, they definitely need to have a lot of practice freehand coding. I don't know what the technical Ozobot term is, but freehand coding is where they just practice on a blank piece of paper and just make sure that they can go. And I also have boo-boo stickers ready to go. And that actually costs them on these projects. It costs them points because they are major grades. So this was my first time. What I struggled with most when I got into doing STEM in my classroom is high school stuff and having it built into content. So this is the first project I did with it, and it completely builds it into algebra curriculum. And anybody, I'm not sure in other grades or other states where quadratics come and quadratic attributes, but this was an excellent example. I don't know do you want me to show it, Melissa, or not? They can watch it later. Okay. But this is the girls down here. I love this picture of them because this is what she absolutely they got so excited when they got it right, and they ran around giving their whole group like high fives and everything. And that's what it's all about. Like, that to me is what I love the most about it, them, is seeing the success. And it's difficult for them sometimes because it's, paying attention to detail and being specific, and they don't generally always want to do that. So here's the video of a beautiful project. So that was one of my good examples of the projects that came out. And the projects this year were very good too. That one had no boo-boo stickers on it or anything like that. And I guess the time that it takes to do something like that one, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to go back on here. There we go. The time it took is, I definitely plan 2 solid days, and sometimes the third day might be grading. It might need, it really depends on the year. I am very, very blessed that in math models, I can take an extra day if I need to, but I feel like that the coding does take some time, and it does take a good day. So, and a lot of people have asked that, but I do feel like it's valuable because it is individualized learning, and it is troubleshooting, and it is real life, because you're going to come across obstacles and you got to make it right. And I think it's really important. I also have very wonderful administrative support when it comes to this, and they like seeing the kids do it. And it's a motivating tool. They have fun with it. And sometimes you just need a motivation and something different to do. And it's also, this project highlighted some really important, you can't go on with teaching quadratics unless they can do these. The next one I have was one I developed right before we got out for break. And this tended to come out so challenging that I have a lower level. So I have one for more elementary kids, because this was a lot of thinking and a lot of logic. And one of my professional development goals this year is to look at logic and work on it. And so logic's super important. That's where geometry starts. That's with a lot of math. What do you have to do first? They have to have a lot of, spatial reasoning and say, okay, well, how's Ozobot going to be traveling here? And then if y'all look, I'm not sure if y'all can see my mouse, but yeah, you can. Like right here, when he goes up here, you don't want him to get stuck. So what does he need to do? And this was definitely, I mean, these kids put some time in. They worked the solid 45 minutes on this. And this kid over here was so excited. He's like, you can film it. You can film it, Mr. Richardson. You can film it. Okay. So he did an awesome job. It went all the way through this. And it's just, there's a lot going here. So I'm going to play a little bit of the video so you guys get an idea of what something like this is going to add to your classroom and their thinking. So I just did the end of it. But they have to determine, like, oh, he's going up this way. And all the kids, what I really loved is they had that question about, well, if he's going over that code, is he going to read that, and is it going to do something different? But this code going this way is different than going this way. So you start looking at those different orders and that paying attention to detail. And it really did exactly what I wanted it to do. It got them thinking different and hard, and they need to go beyond their comfort zone in math, because they get so accustomed to, they need you there to do every step. And this one, it's like, I kind of led him through the first, and I just went and sat down, well, I didn't sit down, but, I was like, oh, no, what do you think he needs to do? Where does he need to go? And they definitely had to think about each little difference and what they wanted to add to it. So it had a lot to it. Plus, it was just kind of a fun integration. And in your file, I have outfits for Ozobot bits, and you can do the outfits a little higher and put them on his hats on Evo. You don't want to block Evo's sensors though, because then he'll yell at you, and he literally will scream no at you if you block him when he's trying to go somewhere. So I have 2 levels of this puzzle in there for you, and and then I do have it color coded as an example for you on the lower version. But I tend to not put answer keys in free lessons, because the kids will learn to go find them. And you're welcome to email me if you have any questions about answer keys or anything like that, and I'll be happy to share them. Uh, this is one I did, and I just want to, I think laughter is a wonderful medicine, and it's been a very difficult time for us right now. And I pray and I hope that everybody is doing well during this. And I appreciate y'all all coming out to share this time with us. And I kind of just was inspired. I'm a teacher, we're used to moving, and I did this activity just last, I guess, the Sunday before last, Melissa. And it just kind of made me think about what's going on in this world. And I had originally done this Hermione one down here, and where she starts out at the dorm and she has to gather supplies for a potion. And I discovered the hard way, because I had not used Ozoblocky a lot, that Ozobot only turns one way. So Ozobot going this way means he has to rotate all the way around, because he only goes counterclockwise to get to the thing. And so there was a lot of figuring multi-step equations, having to know the equation of a straight angle, having to know the degrees in a circle, and all those different options here. But this one is more of a free thinking one. The kids can go any direction. They can go wherever they want to get to what they want to do. And there's a lot of troubleshooting in there, like the friction with the paper. There's a lot of little different things that could make a difference on here. So what I've shown you guys here is this is all my work that I did to get Ozobot there. So I was thinking, and I sat down, and I'm sorry, it's on paper, but the video came out good the first time. So I kind of went with it. And this is the one I made for kind of a current situation. And then I ended up doing it where it's printed up and there's pictures and everything. And I am from Texas, so there's a Whataburger. No sponsor, but they're awesome. See if it'll play. But this again was using, they have a specific direction they have to go. And I do have worksheets provided for y'all on here. Looks like it's not loading. Might have to get Melissa to play it. You might have better Wi-Fi. Not sure. But this one, they actually have to go a specific direction. You found it. So that is all of the kind of just a lot going into that. Somebody asked, what were the skills here? You have to measure with a protractor. You have to measure with a ruler, and I had them do it in centimeters, and then they have to convert it to millimeters because Ozoblocky is in millimeters. One of the parameters they have to fit into there, which I think is really good because it's giving them limitations, is that Ozobot only reads numbers up to 127. So if he has to travel 180 millimeters, they have to do all the math for that. And it adds a pretty, I think, a high level factor when they have to fit it into the different limitations that they might have on that. Oh, I'm sorry. And somebody said the skills for the Harry Horcrux game. And that one was logic, order of operations, troubleshooting, real life, taking the tools you have to work with and applying them. I have pretty extensive lists in my Ozobot classroom lessons of all of the state standards, not state standards, I'm sorry, CSTA, ISTE, and Common Core standards that apply to them. So again, this one can be, these are both very individualized because they draw their own lines to figure out how to get to places. I put this in as just they have to avoid like a sickness in there. I did not reference anything to pay respect and be more attentive to people and what they're going through. But there's little molecules in there, and you can really adapt any worksheet like this you want to make work for you. It just was kind of a fun, different way to incorporate some math in there and a lot of multi-step equations and perseverance and stuff. So I think that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's so amazing. I've seen your content come through and I've been so excited about it. And just to hear you speak about it and explain it is just so fun and exciting to hear.
Thank you.
Um,
I see one question here. I only have bits. I just got my EVOs because I became a certified educator, which I'm sure Nikki is going to address with you. And if there's any other questions, did y'all see any I needed to answer?
Yeah, and one thing I did notice you mentioning when you were speaking about the turning of Evo in Ozobot, I believe you can, in Ozobot, you can get it to turn both ways. There's just negative value, so it would go all the way up to negative 127. So I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone was assuming that,
good to know.
turn right, it can actually turn both ways. It just takes a little bit of tinkering and playing with those negative
Well, I tried doing it with like you can stop the wheels and stuff, and it didn't work on my paper that I was using, but I thought it was still great logic for the kids to have to work out and troubleshooting and working within those limitations. You have to get rid of addition with subtractions. They needed to know what to do. So
Perfect. All right, great. I'm gonna take the screen and just continue to share the slideshow. Thank you again to both Lisa and Nikki for just sharing such wonderful content that they've created. And I do want to share with our audience that if you are inspired by Nikki and Lisa, you can also create your own content. If this has sparked any ideas or content that you want to create for your own kids, you know, as teachers, we are used to stealing ideas and sharing ideas, and it's always more meaningful for our students when we share the ideas and share the wealth in a lot of ways. So if you have ideas that you would like to share with other educators, feel free to submit them through our lesson creator tool. And I know that some people have been asking about how you become a certified educator. In the chat, I did link to our website that has more information about that. But the first steps to qualifying are submitting 3 high-quality lessons through this lesson creator tool. So I highly recommend that you check it out. If you have any questions about the certified educator program, email me, melissa@ozobot.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions because we love our certified educators and we want to do everything we can to support them. And we're so lucky to have both Nikki and Lisa as certified educators for us. So we are going to move on to Q&A. I know there was a lot of really rich and meaningful questions in our Q&A panel. So we'll go ahead and start with some of those questions. For everybody else that, if you have questions moving forward, you can always reach out to Nikki at her Twitter handle, and Lisa as well. That's listed for you there. And if you're looking for PD, a PD credit certificate, you can email heather@ozobot.com. So that information is there in that slide if you're interested in it. I'm just going to pull up the questions, and the first question I thought is from Melissa, and her question is, how often do you utilize Ozobots in your classroom, and do you ever run into students becoming disengaged? She uses hers on a rotating basis, but she's fearful that they'll lose interest. So do you have any insights or thoughts into that question?
So I will start and jump right in and say I have not seen my kids lose interest. I try to only use the Ozobots when I feel like they are going to add in a meaningful experience. So sometimes it is that we use them almost daily, and sometimes we won't use them for a week. It just depends on what I'm teaching and how I need them to support my curriculum. I was kind of nervous at the beginning that would happen, but my kids are so into the Ozobots that we've had a lot of indoor recess. They figured out how to play tag with the Ozobots and the iPads. They're driving them on Ozoblockly and they're playing tag with each other. They'll just draw their own coding. I know there was a question about the lines. It's really just trial and error, but my class, they will draw just a picture of one of my little guys that's really into Dogman. So he drew a whole Dogman picture and tested it. I have a 4-year-old who also loves doing coding, and he can get the code to work. And then one of my tips that somebody had asked to is if the code becomes too thick or you need to go over it, Avery labels, which almost every educator has, can be easily snipped and used and put over top. Even a Post-it note can actually fix a boo-boo on any track that you make.
I agree. Like I said, I use them about 4 or 5 times a year unless I throw an activity in, because I do teach high school and it's not a phone. So sometimes it's a little bit, you got to get something different in there. Some kids get kind of frustrated with it. And, I'll know those kids by the time we get to the major grade. And I'm like, well, you need to partner with somebody who's better at coding. And, y'all need to practice. And I think a lot of people are putting in here about using graph paper to help them drawing the correct size lines. But I learned that they tend to just fill in the lines and not really learn how to draw a line on a blank sheet of paper. So I do think it's important the very first time you do Ozobots to have blank paper and tell them just play, and they will do stuff you never even thought about. And let them record it, let them upload it, and share it with their friends on Snapchat, and show it off. And they definitely have a lot of fun with it. But I definitely think practicing is important.
Great, thank you so much. There's another question. I'm not sure if this was directed to one specific educator, but I think it applies to both. Xandra is asking, do you use it more in math centers or do you use it more to assess learning, or more for an additional activity? How are these math lessons utilized?
I use it as actually the very first week of school as a following directions, order of operations, paying attention to detail, and they all get that it's definitely like in an equation. It's the opposite. You have to look at the direction he's going. You have to do troubleshooting. I kind of do it as an introduction to reading directions and paying attention, and then I do it. Mine are generally like a day activity. I don't do as many centers in my class because it has to be more guided instruction. And then I do the major grade one. So I do it as more of a whole class, as a class activity or a grade.
And I'll just jump in and say that I've used it as both for additional practice for the students, and they just create the maze as part of our guided practice, or I've also done it where I will take it for a grade. For the one that's like just the multiplication practice, I just want them practicing the basic facts. I don't necessarily need it for a physical grade. For the one that was the perimeter of the polygons, I did take that for a grade for measuring to the nearest half inch and finding perimeter of a polygon. So it just depends, again, how you're using it in your classroom and how it serves you. And I think that's back to that basic as a teacher. You just need to figure out how it's going to work for you. And I don't think there's just one blanket or one right answer that's going to make it, fit for your classroom.
Thanks so much, Nikki and Lisa. Our next question is from Keely, and the question is, would I be accurate in that students need to be familiar with the Ozobots first before incorporating them into math concepts? I feel like they need to have mastered the math skills before integrating the Ozobots.
Okay, I think that the Ozobots are definitely an integration. The ones that I take like the beginning of the school year, they have to complete an activity in order to get their credit. And so it's more like a completion. The quadratic one, 30 points of it, if you look at the rubric, and it's a very specific rubric in the Ozobot classroom lessons, 30 points of it is the coding and the accuracy. So I do put both of them in there. Did I answer that? I guess. So it's a little bit of both.
I think it just goes back and depends on what you're asking of the students. When we kind of dove in, my kids had experience using the Ozobots in the STEAM lab, but in the classroom, they were introduced to the new concept of probability initially, and they were able to successfully come up with the probability for those 4 different outcomes. So I think, again, it's just what you're looking for in the classroom. After that day, my kids started making their own track, and they just kind of ran with it. So I feel like it just depends on your learners and what you're looking for in your classroom.
My kids had never seen them. Most of my kids have never seen them because nobody's ever seen them. I'm a high school teacher. They don't do stuff like that in high school generally. So that's the reason I do it the first couple of days. Like the first.
And then just to touch on the coding aspect, I know somebody asked if the coding piece was hard. I have the big poster posted in my classroom in 2 different places, and I also have the printouts for them to have if they want to access the codes. It's not difficult for them to learn, and they quickly learn that tornado and spin code, and they learn the turbo really fast because they're so engaged and they're so motivated by it. They love seeing the success in like the instant gratification with it, and also that grit and perseverance piece that when they are able to plow through something and figure it out, they really have just a different gratification.
Thank you both. There's a question that I think applies to both of you. One educator is asking if there's any suggestions for math activities with culturally diverse themes or for culturally diverse classrooms. Do you have any suggestions for creating content?
My classrooms are all very culturally diverse, and I teach it as I teach it with everybody. With math, again, because the activities that I'm generally doing are math content heavy, and I have not ever had an issue with it. If they did ask, I probably would theme something to the way a kid wanted it. It'd be really easy to switch out pictures or something like that. But other than that, my classes are, and I teach the lessons as you will read or as you've seen.
My classrooms are also my classroom, I have one of them, is also very diverse. I have English as a second language learners. I have students with special needs, and sometimes those kids are actually the ones that are most successful with this because it is very concrete and they're able to see those codes. And one of my students with special needs this year actually was the one that was most engaged with the Ozobot, and she's the one that named all of them, and she really had a lot of success with it. So I think that because of the coding and the pictures, it does go culturally across. It doesn't matter their level.
Sasha is asking about the ideal ratio for Ozobots to students. I know with Ozobot, we recommend 2 to 1, 2 students and 1 bot to promote collaboration. And but I would love to get Nikki and Lisa's thoughts about what works in their classrooms as well.
I actually work very hard to get 1 per student, especially for the introductory activities and like the Harry Horcrux where they need it to sit there and play and do and all that kind of stuff. If you're blessed to get 1 per student, that's great. You can also make it work with 1 per 4 students. I mean, it's what do you have and what can you work with? And I think ideally I would love to have 1 per kid. I think with the new Evos, I'm only going to do probably 1 per every 2 kids, and I think both would work.
So I initially started off with my donors 2s and I only had 2, and I really made that work. So I think it just depends on, you can make 1 Ozobot work, you can make 22 work. I love having, they're just different activities. Sometimes I want them to have their own, sometimes I want them working in a group. It depends on what I'm specifically asking of them. And there are times where it lends where they're working in partnership or they're working in a team of 6. So just thinking about those critical thinking skills and the collaboration piece too is really important with the Ozobots.
Great. Michelle is asking what applications are best for creating new Ozobot lessons. Lisa and Nikki, do you have any recommendations?
I am a bite off more than you can chew person, so I just kind of go and do what I can do and try and work it in. But I always search Ozobot first. I always get ideas from online. If you have a lesson, you can email it to me and I'll see if I can figure something out. You know, it's what can I do with this? How can I work this in? That's just the way I do things. I work, I guess.
Can you repeat the question, Melissa? I think I misinterpreted it.
Yeah, I think Michelle's asking how, like, what types of platforms or programs you use to create your lessons. So I know some educators have used Google Draw or Excel or PowerPoint to create materials. That's how I'm interpreting the question. But if
That's
Michelle,
what I thought.
yeah. If Michelle,
Okay, so I do most of my lessons in either Word or PowerPoint when I'm creating them. If I'm drawing a line and it's just a simple line tool. And if I'm doing a maze, I just use the block and then leave the inside white for the kids. So I don't use anything fancy, just PowerPoint and Word.
Okay, I was wrong. Me too.
I'm sure, Lisa, people appreciate your offer to create
Insight.
content for them. So. All right, I think that wraps up our Q&A session. We do have a quick poll that we would like to ask our audience to vote in currently. How familiar are you with Ozobot? So if you could quickly answer this poll, it gives us an idea of who's in our audience and what kind of content we would like to create for our future webinars. And once we finish a couple poll questions, we will move on to our giveaway. Heather will announce our giveaway winners.
So excited.
Yes. It looks like we have about half of our participants. I'll give everyone about 5 more seconds to answer the poll question. Great. It looks like, let me show the results. It looks like about half are current users of Ozobot, and about a quarter are brand new, and everyone else is somewhere in between. So we have a good mix of educators here. Let's see. We would love to know what grade levels you teach as well. I'll give us about 30 seconds to plug in our answers. About 10 more seconds left. If you haven't answered the poll, go ahead and do so. Okay. Looks like most are K through 5 teachers, but we have educators from all over the spectrum, so that's really great. And our last poll question, we would love to know what subjects are you, that you teach and that you're most interested in. I will also give about 30 seconds for everyone to answer this poll question. Looks like I haven't had any answers come through.
It hasn't been launched.
It says, let me try that one more time. Relaunch poll 3. Are you able to see it? There we go. Perfect. About 20 more seconds to answer the poll. And then it's giveaway time, just in time. All right. Wow, these are very interesting results, actually. Let me share them with everyone. About half of us are math teachers and or technology teachers, and then everyone else falls into other categories. So it's great to know that there's other content area teachers interested in teaching math. That's always so nice to know that Lisa and Nikki's expertise is very well valued. So, all right, I'm handing it off to Heather. I wanted to just thank Lisa and Nikki for their incredible presentations today and spending the evening with us, but Heather will take it away with our giveaway.
Okay, so we are giving away 3 Evo Educator entry kits in this webinar, and I thought it would be fun for Nikki to pick a number between, let's see, between 2 and 127, and then same for Lisa, if you could pick a number, and then Melissa, I'm actually going to have you pick a number also.
I pick 83.
83, so let me see who's number 83. Looks like Roz Davis Grimes is our first winner. Congratulations.
Yay, Roz.
Congrats. I'm gonna do 36.
36, okay. 36, we have Dana Walker. It's our second winner. Yay!
I don't get to do this, so this is really exciting. I will choose 8 because I am a UCLA Bruin, and we did the 8 clap. So number 8 for UCLA.
Number 8, we have Heather Brown. It's our third winner. So we have Heather Brown. We have, what was the other one? Dana Walker and Roz Davis Grimes. So
And we'll be
congratulations.
reaching out to them with
Yeah.
information of with how we'll reach out to them and get the kits to them. And I think that's it, Heather, right? Is there anything else we needed to cover?
I don't think so. I'll be emailing the 3 giveaway winners with the email that you guys have provided in the giveaway form, and just to get your address so we can send that out to you. And then also, if anybody needs any PD certificates, reach out to me at heather@ozobot.com and I'll get those over to you.
And thank you again to Lisa and Nikki. This was such an incredible webinar. I know so many educators valued all of your contributions and your ideas, and we are just so lucky to have you as our certified educators. And so we're thankful that you're so willing to share with other educators as well. All right, have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.